Hello, my name is Nicolai Pfeffer. I'm clarinetist, and in this little video tutorial for Henle Verlag, I want to talk today about the Four Pieces, Opus 5 by Alban Berg. Alban Berg composed his four pieces in 1913 and dedicated them to his teacher Arnold Schoenberg. They are written in total free atonality, and with their enormous brevity and their, let's say, expressive density, they come close, or they remind a little bit to the six little piano pieces, Opus 19 by Schoenberg, actually. With these little musical aphorisms separated by long pauses between the movements, Berg actually states that the movements may not flow into one another. He creates an expressive density and the most intense musical expression within only a few amount of bars, actually. Therefore, he sort of skillfully plays with the romantic ideas and romantic sounds and romantic gestures, but also combines this romantic idea with new formal brevity of the second Viennese school. So to say, Adorno seemed to realize that these four pieces by Berg actually resemble a little bit the sonata form structure of a symphony. So he states more or less that the first piece reminds of an allegro opening. The second movement, or the second piece, would be close to a slow movement of a symphony. The third movement or piece, let's better say, should remind of a scherzo-like third movement. And of course, then we have a rondo-like finale, the fourth piece. So, having said this, I think this apparent contradictions between romanticism and new ways creates a certain tension, let's say, also an artistic double standard. And I think this contradiction adds tremendously to the musical expression and to the musical approach of these four pieces. Berg starts with an obvious reminder of Strauss' Till Eulenspiegel. Whereas the original is something like that. It's very light and very interesting, I would say. And strangely, though, Berg doesn't resolve it. In fact, he answers with a suffering lamento style gesture in the clarinet. It is very grotesque, actually, that he doesn't resolve this motive. What follows next in the bars 2 until actually 5 is a very intense interplay and dialogue between clarinet and piano. So we have a lot of inversions, motivical inversions that add to a very intense development and actually a giant accumulation in bar 6, 5, and 6. Let me play that for you. The music then passionately breaks out again in measure 7 and leads to, let's say, a very questioning kurzer Halt, a short stop with a tritone in bar 8. So after this passionate run towards the high E in measure 7, I think this tritone is very expressive and also a little bit questioning in bar 9. What happens next is actually that we have a composed ritardando in bar 10, 11, and 12. that is only interrupted by these luminous chords of the piano. And as we do this composed ritardando together with the piano, we tiredly fade away with the sound. So be very careful with the tonguing. I would ask you to tongue very lightly, or even don't use the tongue at all. It is very impressive as you play the fermata in the softest piano pianissimo possible. The second piece of the 4 pieces for clarinet and piano, Opus 5 by Alban Berg, is actually a very expressive and very romantic a piece, I would say. It begins with these a little bit tired and very reminiscent major thirds in the piano, and over this more or less rigid rhythm, we a very expressive and very very romantic melody in the clarinet part works its way up. What you could hear in bar 3 is a so-called echo tone. And for me personally, it doesn't have to do so much with actually a specific dynamic, but rather with a psychological component of this marking. So echo tone for me is something very reminiscent, something that reminds us of a passage or an important note that we have just heard. So it is impossible to not only play it piano or pianissimo, but with a certain amount of energy. What then happens with the pickup to bar 4 is that the clarinet draws hope by repeating and doing the crescendo on all these high Ds that somehow want to work their way up to some sort of climax to bar 5, which appears strangely in piano though. Let me play that for you. And after we have reached this high F in bar 5, the music immediately falls back to the low clarinet register, and it's getting actually very heavy with all these augmentations. It needs time, it has a certain resistance, and it is also very, it seems to me, very, very tired before it falls back to the low E. And actually the major third that reminds of us about the beginning of the piece in bar 7. Again, we hear an echo tone, a reminiscent echo tone at the end of the piece as we fade away with the piano together playing the thirds. The third piece of the 4 pieces, Opus 5 by Alban Berg, is intended as a scherzo, I think, and it runs by extremely fast, extremely ghostly. Although it has this enthusiastic beginning, the music already in bar 3 kind of stumbles and gives up. But then already with the pickup to bar 4, these 3 piano chords, which are extremely sonorous, initiate a second attempt with much energy. The clarinet then replies to this by playing 3 notes with Flatterzunge, that kind of give up at the end of bar 8. With the piano solo, let's say, in bar 9, we have a totally different sound world, I would say. It is very romantic, and it forms a huge contrast to the rushed beginning of the movement. So the piano plays very opulently and very blossomingly, and the clarinet, molto espressivo, the piano, and the clarinet kind of skeptically comments on this expressive piano playing from the background with kind of a flageolet sound, moving its way very skeptically to the high E, which is marked as very long. And after this kind of reflection with this morendo character, we hear again very rushed the thirds of the piano, which a little bit do remind us about the beginning of the second movement. And again with very fast and very vigorous somehow with echo tones and Flattertang, the third piece comes to an end. Finally, and with 20 bars, the longest of the 4 pieces begins with bell-like songs of the piano, both in C major and G sharp minor, which are only interrupted by lamento gestures of the clarinet. The music literally dissolves, and what we hear next is a very expressive, very highly romantic clarinet solo. And in the following passage, we do form kind of an accompaniment for the triplets of the piano, very much in the background and not disturbing the piano at all. Our job is to support the piano with very colorful clarinet playing. What happens next is a very, let's say, shimmering, luminous middle section with a composed ritardando in bar 8 and 9, followed by let's say, a very light and very charming, inspiring interplay between those two instruments, which leads in bar 10 to these repeated high Ds, which kind of dissolve into emptiness. After that, we get reminded of the piano chords from the beginning that we hear again both in C major and G sharp minor. And the clarinet comments on these chords with these echo tones, which get actually augmented in bar 11 and bar 12. From bars 13 until bar 16, the piece bursts out in almost terrifying violence as we reach the high A in the clarinet, which is supported by the tremolo playing of the piano. Ending a little bit in resignation, we have this flageolate sound of the piano, and at the end, in bar 18 and 19, the clarinet comments on within the sound world of the flageolet very resignedly, but very, very free also. It says ganz frei in German. That was my little video tutorial for Hähnle Verlag about the Four Pieces Opus 5 by Alban Berg. I truly hope you found some inspiration and some tips and advice for these tremendously beautiful four pieces. What I could advise you at the very end of this video is to really take a German dictionary and look up all these little expression markings and tempo markings, as they're really helpful. This goes much beyond traditional markings like andante or allegro. In fact, these are sometimes like little hints that one could understand almost as advice, like a stage direction. So please take a dictionary and look up in your language all the different meanings for these expression markings. I hope you enjoyed, and see you maybe next time.